Awesome. Good day, everybody. So we have a very special guest, and I'm going to just introduce him in a bit. So for those of you seeing me for the first time, my name is Jayant Rasamsedi, and I'm the founder of Pixeltest. We are a fast-growing Web 3.0 and artificial intelligence startup. We're building a community. We have about 26,000 people, and really excited and grateful for this guest session. And I've been pondering a lot. I've been very grateful that I know Mitesh and Indu Khatri, who sort of friends with Nithya, and I heard his podcast on YouTube with their community, and I was like blown away. So first off, Nithya, so grateful, and I love that. I watched it twice or thrice. In fact, if you go back to that YouTube, you'll see my comments there too. Really excited and pumped. The way you talk about MIND, etc. Even so, my team members are also here. I've just said
great, lovely. Yeah.
And so let me, with everybody's permission, introduce Nithya. Nithya is, so he's done his BA in Ferguson, and I saw one interesting thing, the statistics. So we're going to ask him some, what is T value?
Way back.
Exactly. So a monk who also knows math. And after that, he was with XLRI. So he's been at the, most premium places. And then I think he had a corporate journey before he did 6 to 7 years, I'm guessing, of I want to say soul searching, etc. 6 years, that's really big. And then now he's an author of a bunch of books, which I'll be telling towards the end. And he also has his own courses and community. So without further ado, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you just agreed to this right after one call. I know you're traveling in Goa, etc. So without further ado, would love to know your journey. And it is so profound and so different. And my wish or my aim was like, all of us are so caught in this rat race of career, salary, job, etc. If you could shed some light about your journey, etc. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jay, and very happy to be here, feeling good energy in this group. And my intention is to give you some perspectives that might help you look at things in maybe a slightly different way and expand your horizons in some way. One thing I like to say, that the disclaimer that we use in these teachings, that just because it worked for me doesn't mean it'll work for you. And just because I think it works for me doesn't mean it really works for me. That keeps us honest and makes us really question that what we're believing, is it really impacting our life? So my aim is to share a little bit about my journey, like Jay asked, and also to give you a few perspectives and maybe some steps going ahead on how can we go from job to career to calling. Job is something we do with our hands to pay the bills. For me, a job is something like these Zomato people and Swiggy people and Dunzo people. Just an example of a job is that they're running around delivering things and they're doing a great service. However, chances are it's not something that has much of a career path. I mean, you can't, even if you're a Zomato delivery guy for a long time, chances are you'll not become very, very senior. You'll remain at pretty much that level. So it's not really a career, it's a job. It's something you do to pay the bills. Chances are you didn't get many other opportunities. So you became someone who's riding a scooter all day long, usually in the heat. And so then the shift from job to a career is when there's some kind of a progression, and you can see that, yeah, if I keep growing and learning and developing and contributing, I'll go higher in the organization, I'll have more influence, I'll have more power, I can make a bigger difference. And many people are familiar with the idea of a career, but something that's not talked about enough is calling. And calling is something that's inherently fulfilling. And there's a research I read about years back, and I wonder sometimes if it's real or if it's an urban legend. But nevertheless, I think it's got something to it. It says that from one of these premier, I think it was Caltech in California, and they asked the graduating batch, would you rather do something that you love to do, or would you do something that pays you well? And the story goes that 85%, 90% of the class said, that pays us well. We've got student loans, we've got obligations to our parents and this and that and the other. And right now we've got to take the best paying job. Later on, when we have some, bit of a buffer, then we can go and explore things we love to do. So 85% of them did something that they would pay them well. And then they followed up with this class about 20 years later. They found that about 10% of them had become outstandingly successful, really well known and well respected in their field. And of that 10%, 8% belong to the 15% category, and only 2% belong to the 85% category. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but it really does reflect well. This has been my understanding as well, that when we do what we love, we end up pouring more of ourselves into it and we give it the best that we have. There's a lovely Greek word, meraki. And meraki means don't just do things. When you do something, pour yourself into it to such an extent that you leave a little bit of yourself in it for the forever. You pour, don't just do things, pour yourself. So pour what? Pour all your love and all your creativity. Pour yourself into it. I live in Pune, and we have, like I'm sure every city has its famous food joints, right? So there is a pani puri wala in camp in Pune, and he's near the Hanuman temple. And this pani puri wala, this shop, it's not even a shop, it's just like a little stand, like a big table. And he's been giving food here for over 100 years, he and his family. So it's like over 100, I think 150 years maybe. And it's considered some of the best pani puri in Pune. And when you go there, you realize there's something about this. It's not only the delicious, it's got some extra quality to it. And they only open in the evening, about 4 or 5 o'clock. I asked him, actually, what do you do the rest of the day? The rest of the day we're preparing. We are making the puris and we are cutting the ingredients and everything. So obviously he and his family have been pouring themselves so much into it that in those few hours of business from whatever 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, they make enough and maybe more than enough. And they're well known, right? So this is an example of meraki. Pour yourself into what you're doing to such an extent that you leave a little bit of yourself in it forever. And so for me, that's calling. Calling is something. So if job is hands and career is hands plus head, then calling is hands plus head plus heart. And I think all of you, whether you're entrepreneurs or whether you're IT professionals, whatever you're doing, chances are you're spending many hours a day finding solutions for your employer, finding solutions for your clients. And there's some pretty tough problems you have to solve for them. So I want to give you a problem to solve for yourself. And the problem to solve is, what if I challenge you not to settle for a job and not to settle for a career? And what if I challenge you to find a calling? And maybe it may not happen today or tomorrow, but you take it up as a challenge. Just like you solve complex things, you probably have to, there are projects and there are deadlines and there are complex things. That's how you get paid whatever you get paid, because you solve complex things. But this is a far more important thing. You have to figure out something, and you must have heard of this famous word, ikigai. You have to figure out a way that what you love and what you're good at and what benefits the world and what pays your bills all overlap. Not just 2 of them, not just 3 of them, but all 4 of them. Now, that's a nice problem to have to figure out, to solve. I have a neighbor, my next door neighbor, and I never see him work. So I say, hey, what's up? Don't you have a job? He said, Nithya, I decided long back, I want to retire early. So he must be somewhere in his mid-40s or something, but he's made his packet and he just does things he loves. He reads books, and I don't even know how he spends his time. In fact, just yesterday, I went to my friend Sri Ram's house. He also said, Nithya, I never wanted to work a day beyond 40. But that's just an example. That may not be the case for you. You may be happy to work the rest of your life. But the point is that these people gave themselves a challenge, that I want to figure out a way that I am done and dusted with my financial requirements by X age, right? And they did what they needed to do to get there. I was just thinking, wouldn't it be fun, just like Jayant, you created this community, wouldn't it be fun to create a community called REDG, which stands for Retire Early and Do Good? So now that's a fun challenge, right? And so come up with challenges like this for yourself. Before I get into my journey, I just want to share, this is like the context I'm setting, that for me, it's about moving from a job to a career to a calling. The only reason we tend to settle, I believe, is because we see way too many people around us doing it. If we lived in a world where people did not settle for anything less than a calling, then you would not see so many people just going along with the way things are. I don't know if, like in my case, I've had a chance to go to jail, not because I was in prison, but I was teaching meditation in jail. And it's very difficult. Getting into jail there are many stages, right? They'll check you, they'll do a full body scan, they'll ask you to fill many registers and everything. And when I go to teach in IT companies, of course, now with pandemic, many are working from home. But I would feel like this is like going to jail. They'll ask me what is my laptop, they'll ask for the serial number, they'll ask me all that's in my bag. And then what is inside these little cubicles? I'm telling you, my experience was I'm just going into a more comfy jail. And that was my perception, no matter how you paint the colors of the walls and whatnot. There's strict timing in, timing out. There's a code of, usually you have to wear a dress. Maybe on Friday, they'll let you wear something else. Not all companies, some are more flexible. But to me, really, I felt that, how is this different from, it's just a fancy jail. And instead of being caught up in an actual building, of course, there is a building, but we're caught up in subtler ways. Like when I did my MBA and I got a job, then they began offering me these soft loans that, hey, you can get a car, you can get a house, you can get stuff. And I could see that you're offering this to me. Why are you offering this to me? Because now I'm going to be stuck with EMIs. And I have to pay 20, 30, 40, 50,000 more than that per month. And now I have to take this job. Because if I don't take that job, you take away all my nice things. You take away my car, you take away my home, my everything. So in my case, I saw through it. I said, no, this is not what I want. I was 16 years old when my mother took me for a meditation course. I didn't know what I'm going for. I just kind of went with her. And we spent 3 days in complete silence. And we spent the whole day focusing on trying to be present. And one of the ways to be present is you're aware of a present phenomena. The breath is a present phenomena. Have you noticed you always breathe in the present? There's no past breath and future breath. There's just a now. There's a breath now. There's a feeling now of breathing. So to be with your breath is the way to be in the present. So for 3 days, we practiced trying to be aware of the breath. And I was amazed at how hard that was. Something as simple as be aware of the breath. I couldn't do it for more than a minute. It was very humbling for me that, oh, I've read so many books and I think I know so much, but I can't even be aware of my breath for a minute. And I realized there's a whole other dimension of growth that I haven't even touched. I may have read many books, and I was quite a reader. So even when I was young, I'd read a lot. I could actually talk to most people. But however, I found myself very lacking in this capacity to be present with myself, to be with my emotions. A lot of inner reactivity I noticed. And so that's what got me interested in meditation and practicing these things. That journey continued side by side while I went to Ferguson College, did my MBA, began working in the corporate world. And soon I began realizing that, yes, this is a career, but it's not my calling. This is not inherently satisfying. You've heard these things like TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Why thank God it's Friday? So that we can now go and enjoy our weekend. So, but I said, why TGIF? Why not TGIM? And why not TGIT? Why not? No worries. Yeah. Why not thank God it's today? Why not TGIM? Why not thank God it's Monday? So what kind of life would it take? In the Zen tradition, they have a very fascinating concept. They say that no work, no food. So there are monks who have spent 90 years living an active life. And they'll teach and they'll garden and they'll do all kinds of things. And maybe somewhere after 90, whenever it happens, yeah, maybe they're not so strong anymore. Maybe they don't have the energy to go and work. So the philosophy is no work, no food. So the day they can't work, they'll stop eating. And then at some point, like the Jains do, at some point, when you stop eating, at some point, the body just settles down and it passes on. But what an interesting way of thinking, that basically my work itself is my nourishment. My work itself, it's not something that's separate. Oh, I'll work so that I can do something else. Notice I'm offering you different perspectives here. A little while back, we talked about retire early. And there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? Knowledge is a point of view. And wisdom is viewing points. So when you come to the world of wisdom, you have to realize that there can be many, many, many ways of looking at the same thing. If today we're talking about purpose of life, then there can be many, many, many perspectives on that. There doesn't have to be just one. And the more perspectives you can see, then the more well-rounded you are and the more wisdom you have. In my own case, I had to learn from many different traditions. I learned from the Buddhist tradition. I learned from the Advaita tradition. I learned from the Sufi tradition. I learned from the scientific experiments that they're doing around the mind. And from many, many, many perspectives, including my own life experience, which is what gave me a somewhat more well-rounded view on things. So to know one is to know none. In fact, talking about life purpose, there is, you might have heard about design thinking. This is quite a popular thing nowadays. And one of the things they use in design thinking is rapid prototyping. So rapid prototyping is don't try to get this one perfect product. Try something and it'll probably fail in some way, then try again, then try again, then try again. Rapid prototyping, quick prototypes. In fact, I have a friend in Pune who has a company around prototyping. So I also learned from him. So why not apply this also to your life? So there was a person who offered a course in the US, forgetting his name, on design thinking applied to your life. And one suggestion he made, I thought was very potent and powerful. He said, suppose instead of thinking of one life, I have one life, I have to live my life. Suppose we say you have 5 lives. This life, you have 5 different ways you could live your life, right? Now, what would those 5 be? Maybe one part of you wants to be an adventurer. You want to travel, you want to experience things, you want to, just live life on the edge, and you want to, that's an adventurer's life. Another part of you wants to do some social reforms. You take up a cause like, there are women aren't being treated well, or schools in villages don't get good, and you become some kind of reformer. So you take up some cause and you work powerfully on that cause, anti-corruption or whatever it is, and then you become a crusader of some kind. That could be another kind of life. Another kind of life could be, maybe a career of some kind. Another kind of life could be that you're a sports person of some kind. Basically, you come up with 5 different prototypes. It has to be something that's meaningful to you, inspiring to you, right? Now, when you think deeply about what would it be like to be an adventurer, what would it be like to be a social crusader, what would it be like to have a very successful career of some kind, even a calling of some kind, to be a published author, to be something else. And then you start seeing, each of these has a certain strength and each of these has a certain weakness. Each of these fulfill me in a certain way and leave me lacking in a certain way, right? And that's what leads to a blended life, a life that has most of the important ingredients that you need, but it'll come from rapid prototyping. You should think too strongly about being a career person. You will never even imagine that, you could be someone who goes to the Himalayas. You would never even imagine that you could go to a school and maybe teach for a year over there. So just a little bit back to my story, that I went on to do an MBA. I worked in the corporate world for not too long, actually 6 months. And I realized that this is not fully for me. And I left my corporate job and I became a Buddhist monk. So I went to Thailand and I ordained as a forest meditation monk. I lived a rather simple life, not touching money, for 6 years. I lived in a forest. Literally, I lived in a forest. I lived in a small hut. In my hut was just my robes. We had one set of robes, and we had our bowl in which we would go to the village to get our food once a day. We'd eat once a day, and we would sleep on a chatai, simple chatai. And what else? We had a little candle. There was no electricity, so there was a little candle and matches, and a little Buddha statue, and maybe a broom to clean my my hut, and maybe a small book of the monk rules that I followed. Pretty much that was it. That was actually all my belongings. I could actually pack up my entire hut in less than 3-4 minutes, and I'd be ready to go anywhere. I also trained to live outdoors. So we have these umbrellas that serve like a tent. You open an umbrella and the handle is detachable. And then you hang a mosquito net on the outside edge of the umbrella. That becomes the mosquito net. You can spend the night under that. So I trained living as simply as possible. The Buddha actually says, all you need to survive, a little bit of food and some clothing and some shelter and some medicine. So for food, he said, train yourself to be satisfied eating 1 meal a day. Right? And at the most, 2 meals between, at least the rule is between dawn and midday, you can eat. So whether you eat twice or you eat once. So in my tradition, we ate once a day. Then so basically you go to the village, whatever food comes into your bowl, that's your meal of the day. Second thing, for clothes, in those days, robes, cloth was actually quite precious. So when someone would donate cloth, then they'd cut it up on purpose and they'd stitch it. So it became less attractive to robbers. And otherwise, they would take cloth that's been thrown away, called rags, and they dye it so it becomes brown. Or we're used to monks being yellow, but actually the forest monks of ancient times wore brown robes. Even in my tradition, we wear brown robes. So either brown or maroon. So you dye the robes, dye the cloth, and you stitch it together so that becomes a robe. So rags can serve as your cloth, your robes. And then for shelter, the Buddha trained us to sleep under the root of a tree. So the root of a tree, which is taking away the sunlight or taking away, rain, is good enough for you. And believe it or not, medicine in Ayurveda, the medicine recommended, which is freely available, is cow's urine. It's supposed to be medicinal. So you take cow's urine, and there are certain herbs you can actually pickle in that. And that actually that's the medicine. That's usually free medicine because no one's going to stop you from taking a little bit of cow's urine. So the Buddha said this should be this is called the requisites, the 4 things you need to survive. Now, beyond this is extra. So if I go and someone gives me a 5-course meal, 7-course meal, that's extra. If someone gives me very nice new robes, new cloth, which I can use, very nice, comfortable cloth, excellent. That's extra. That's not required. That's extra. If someone gives me a nice hut to stay or a nice air-conditioned room to stay, that's extra. That's not required. In fact, what happened to me was after years of sleeping on the ground, I could not sleep on a bed anymore. So when I'd go to the US or whatever, and they'll put me in a room, so I'd pretend to be on the bed, but after that, go out to sleep on the ground because I was not comfortable sleeping on a bed anymore. And then medicine, of course, if you're unwell and you get the right medicine you need, that's extra. But otherwise, even cow's urine is good enough. Now, that's not a lifestyle for everybody, but let me tell you what happened to me doing that for 6 years. It made me pretty fearless. So even though today I have my home and I have my car and I have a lot of things, but I know deep down that if I don't have this, I'll be all right. I don't feel like India में कहते हैं ना सड़क पर आ जाओगे. You lose everything, you'll come on the street. I'm not afraid of coming on the street because I've lived as a wandering monk for many years and I've enjoyed that. It's wonderful. Street is actually a pretty active place. You meet all kinds of interesting creatures in the street. Amazing people, amazing conversations, very generous people. I've walked from one city to another over 4 or 5 days, completely dependent on strangers, people who did not know me, and they fed me, they've given me a place to stay. When I cut my foot, they gave me a bandage. It was all taken care of. And you'll see very interesting, like for example, one morning we were walking on arms round, getting our food, and I go to a certain house and the person doesn't like monks for some reason. And he shoos me away like a stray dog. Get out of my property. Literally shoos me away. All right. So I leave and I'm walking, and just a few minutes later, I'm walking past a school. This is in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, the tradition of monks walking on the streets is gone. So usually people go to the monasteries and offer food to the monks. In Thailand and Burma, they still walk on the streets. So in Sri Lanka, I'm walking on the streets and the school teachers notice I'm walking on the streets and say, wow, this is a great opportunity to teach our children. So the next few minutes, some teacher comes and says, please stop, please wait. And 10 minutes later, the entire school comes out, little kids opening their own tiffin box and giving a small amount of food into our bowls. So from being shooed away like a stray dog to being honored by an entire school of little cute little kids offering me a little bit of food from there. You can see how life is like this, ups and downs. You realize it's an imposter. Both are lies. That person doesn't know me well enough to shoo me away like a dog. And these people don't know me well enough to praise me so much, right? But they have a certain assumption, presumption, perception of who I am. So in other words, people are not seeing you, they're seeing their ideas about you. How liberating that is. So today, if you love my talk, it's not about me. I said something that resonated. And if you hate this talk, that's not about me. I said something that pushed your buttons and you didn't like it, right? And so I can go free, in other words. And that's a really important lesson for me. An important lesson is that I'm not here to please others. If I spend too much of time trying to please others, I'm going to limit myself. I'm going to become a people pleaser. And people pleasers disappoint one important person. And that's themselves. And not only that, people pleasers, even the people you've been trying to please for years, don't get that pleased. Because then they become normal for them. Of course you're going to make me breakfast. Of course, you're going to give me money when I ask for it. Of course, this and that. So it becomes the expectation. And so tomorrow when you say, I can't do it anymore, they'll say, what do you mean you can't do it? And they get very upset with you, right? So what I learned is I'm not here to please others. I'm here to live my truth. And when I live my truth, some people will be pleased and some people will be displeased. But the one person who is reliably pleased is this one. And the one person, Jan, that we are stuck with is ourselves. Somehow life is created. You're stuck with, from birth to death, the one person you're stuck with is yourself. So this has to be your root relationship, your basic foundational relationship. If this is not a healthy relationship, if this is not a relationship that gives you peace and joy and contentment, every other relationship gets compromised. We've got to start. This is like a good selfishness. It's an enlightened selfishness, right? औरों की सहायता करने से पहले अपना मास्क लगाएं. Take care of yourself before you try to help others, right? And these are some of the things that I learned. I asked myself this question years back, that what is the purpose of life? And I thought about it quite deeply. And here's the answer I got. The purpose of life is to be alive. So what makes you come alive? Does being in nature make you come alive? Does playing a sport make you come alive? Does music make you come alive? Does being with friends make you come alive? Does supporting other people, contributing in some way make you come alive? What makes you come alive? Learning new things make you come alive. You have to ask yourself, where in your life are you maximally alive? So for me, the purpose of life is that which makes you come alive. Now, the problem for you is figuring out how can I organize my life in such a way that I'm maximally doing things that make me come alive, right? As opposed to the usual format, I will grind away 5 or 6 days a week so I can do on Sunday or Saturday, Sunday, or maybe once in a while on a holiday, things that make me come alive. This is a very poor solution. And usually you're so tired by the end of that, and you've got shopping to do and house to clean, and you've got no time to do anything else. You're exhausted, right? So we have to, this is a challenge. Like I said, many of you are solving complex problems for your organizations, for your clients, for other people. Please solve this problem for yourself. Find a way to organize your life in such a way that you're doing what you love. See, it can't be everything you love, but some of the things, important things you love, will overlap with the things you're good at, will overlap with the things that you want to contribute. There's a lovely quote: do the work where your deepest gladness meets the world's greatest hunger. I love that quote. Deepest gladness meets the world's greatest hunger. And we'll all perceive the world's greatest hunger separately, differently. Like, okay, for example, let me give my example. What's my deepest gladness? My deepest gladness is learning, practicing, and sharing. I organize my life around these three things. So I like to learn things that inspire me. I like to practice them. And the things that I've learned and I've practiced that I found useful, helpful, I like to share them. I'm quite a teacher. I like to teach and share and facilitate things, right? So I organize my life around these three things. What's the world's greatest hunger? There are many things you could say, but from my perspective, the greatest hunger is we've lost touch with ourselves. We are so hypnotized by what other people want from us, what society wants from us, from expectations and duties and this and that we've lost our own intuition and we've given up somewhere along the way. So for me, the greatest hunger is rediscovering the power of intention, rediscovering the power of attention, rediscovering the simple joys of life, rediscovering what it's like to listen to your inner voice, honor it, live by it. And it's not about perfection. We're all going to goof up many times. I keep goofing up. It's about connection. It's about taking responsibility for your choices. When I left my corporate job, there was no guarantee I would like what I was going to do. And a lot of people said, Nithya, you're not going to get a job like this again easily, right? And you're going to leave the workforce. You may not get hired like this again. I said, yes, that's a risk I've got to take. But I knew this, Jay, I knew this, that years later, if I met a batchmate from XLRI who was earning 5 times, 10 times more than me, I would not envy that person. But I would envy someone who followed his or her heart and did something they were loving while I was doing something that I was just supposed to be doing. And I knew very clearly that's the person I'm going to envy. I'm going to envy someone who follows their heart. And so that's when I decided that it's all right. So leaving this corporate job, I may not get a job like this again, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of saying I tried something. And it didn't work out, fine, but I tried. I gave it the best shot that I could. So I didn't want to live with that regret. A great exercise you can do sometime, which really helped me, was you write your own obituary. Take out 2 hours of your day sometime, put it in your calendar, and write your own obituary. So Jay, when you die, what are people going to say about you? What are your family members going to say about you? What are your close friends going to say about you? What are people you work with going to say about you? What is this community going to say about you? What are people who just barely met you and just randomly know you? What are they going to say about you? It's an illuminating exercise, because you might be surprised to find they're not talking about the usual things people imagine they'll talk. They're not talking about your net worth. They're not talking about how many bedroom house you have, which part of town you live. They're usually talking about the qualities. Was he helpful or not? Or was he trustworthy or not? What did he say behind people's backs? Was he fun to be with or not? How did they feel when they were with you? Those little moments that you've also forgotten, where you said something that encouraged them or supported them. That's the stuff people remember. Whoever comes and says, oh, he had 3 BMWs. Yeah, who cares? All right. And now the fight is about who's going to get the BMW. There's an interesting quote that where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's no will, there are 100 relatives. So this is something I did years back when I was doing my MBA. I wrote my obituary and I asked myself, what will people say about me? And it dehypnotized me from what was going around. In my MBA school, it was all about which company will we join, which industry will we join, what's the pay package like, what's the future like, which companies are coming, what offers are they making. But when I did this exercise, I just completely saw through all of that. What is this? No, it doesn't matter. That's not it. I'm not. And you should really ask yourself the kind of people that inspire you. Choose your teachers carefully. You'll become just like them. So when I saw these high-flying CEOs come to my MBA school to give presentation on their company, it was nice. It was cool. They spoke in a nice way and they were pretty suave. But I can't say I was inspired by them. I was inspired by my meditation teachers. I was inspired by some of the monks I'd met. I was inspired by some of the spiritual teachers I met. Because I felt they were living a deeper life, a more meaningful life. From my perspective, of course, this is, like I said, there's nothing wrong in what they're doing. That's totally fine as well. And be careful the teachers you choose. You'll become just like them. Unconsciously, we start moving in that direction, right? There was a TED talk in which I think it was Daniel Goleman who talked about whatever you think you want in life. Maybe you want a lot of money, maybe you want a lot of power, maybe you want to be very well-known, famous, you've written many books, whatever. Go interview someone who's already done it. So go meet someone who's got a lot of money, got a lot of power, got a lot of fame, written many books, or whatever it is you think is going to make you happy. And you might save yourself years of trouble. Because you might be shocked to find that they have their own hang-ups. Just because you got money doesn't mean you don't have hang-ups. Just because you're famous, in fact, famous people have even more hang-ups sometimes, right? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't earn money and you shouldn't get famous. You should do all of that, but you do it without the assumption that's going to satisfy me. That's a misunderstanding. You don't create goals in the hope of happiness. No. Goals are for growth. Goals are not for happiness. Happiness is an inside job. You have to start with happiness. You have to start with a sense of I'm whole and complete. And then you can go on to do many things. You can go on to earn money and, you know, make a difference and this and that, but it has to come from a sense of wholeness. Otherwise, it becomes a new kind of identity. I'm a do-gooder. I'm someone who started so many foundations. I'm someone who's helped so many people. And it's a new kind of an ego. It's a spiritual ego now. Right? How many people I've helped? And ourselves, we're very afraid of asking for help. We can't ask for help. We're going through many of our own challenges. We can't, because our identity is I'm a helper. Right? So like this, we need to take up different points of view. Okay, I'll say one last thing before we get into Q&A. There's an exercise I did wherein I took a piece of paper and I wrote down on top, what is the purpose of my life? And I began writing answers. This is actually an exercise given by a famous blogger, Steve Pavlina. Steve Pavlina has a blog where he talked about how to find the purpose of your life in 15 minutes. So I said, let's try it. So he said, write down what's the purpose of my life and start writing one sentence answers, one sentence, and keep going. Don't worry. It's like a brainstorming thing. Just keep writing. So you got to keep on writing until you write a sentence that sends shivers up and down your body. And that fills you with a very different kind of energy. This is, that's the purpose of your life. In my case, it didn't take 15 minutes. It took about 45 minutes. I had to keep writing. But I finally hit a statement that really affected me very deeply. And of course, statements are just that, they're ideas, but there's something behind the idea, something deeper than that. Like in my case, the statement was, being a sun, loving everyone. And so the sun for me represents light, represents lightness, represents infinite giving, infinite inspiration, infinite energy, all of those things. And I think you all have had the experience at some point where you're sitting in the morning and the morning sunlight is kissing your skin. And it's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's perfect. It doesn't feel unpleasant. It's just perfect. You know, there's that golden, some of your photographers, there's that golden hour when you can take photographs. It's the perfect time to take photographs. Everything has a glow to it. So around that time, the sun touches your skin. It's a very special feeling. And what I got from writing that thing down was, I want to embody that feeling. What's it like to embody that feeling? What's it like to live a life where I'm a channel of that kind of an energy in my life? That becomes an organizing principle. You might have done the experiment in school where you put this iron filling, like iron dust, iron powder, on a table, and you put a powerful magnet on the table. Now, we would think that all the iron will just get attracted to the magnet. That's not what happens. Instead, you get magnetic lines. The iron powder, iron fillings organize themselves in a particular line, which is a magnetic field of that particular, whether it's a U-shaped magnet, horseshoe magnet, or whether it's a normal magnet, it'll organize in a certain thing. Now, that's the same principle that happens with this. If you have an idea, Swami Vivekananda says, take up one idea, make it your life. Think of it, breathe it, dream of it, fill every nerve, cell, and sinew with that idea, leave every other idea alone. So for example, if I take the idea of being a sun, loving everyone, suppose that's my idea, or take the idea of spreading happiness, being happy for a good reason, being happy for no reason. If I take this idea, And if I think of it, dream of it, fill every nerve, cell, and sinew with that idea. Now that becomes an organizing principle. It determines where I give my attention, the kind of books I read, the kind of activities I engage in, the kind of things I say yes to, and very importantly, the kind of things I say no to, right? And like this, one of my teachers said, success comes more from what you say no to than what you say yes to, right? The steady resistance to the unnecessary is the secret of success. So that organizing principle then has a magnetic quality where the right people, the right books, the right experiences, the right opportunities start showing up. They show up in proportion to how strongly you are connected with that orienting idea, that organizing principle. And I'm sure all of you by now have had some experiences around this, even if you just stumbled across it, where you had synchronicity. You were on a roll and the right people kept showing up, the resources kept showing up, things started happening. There was an ad of Tata Finance which said, find purpose, the means will follow. So powerful. Find purpose, the means will follow. You got to take that step and then let life organize itself around you. So this is what I wanted to share for now. And I'd like to open it up for some conversation. You can share your perspective. You can ask some questions, and happy to open it up. Go ahead, Janit.
Awesome. Actually, first time, I think I'm truly speechless. Like that was, and I've been so fortunate to be, actually hosting and making notes, because when you hit that obituary, like, I mean, people think like you're in your own startup and there's this rat race again and again, but very seldom do you come across very, things that are bone chilling, but in a very, very good way. For me, like I mentioned to you on the phone, Vipassana was fairly a transformative, event. And before, one question I had, as the audience, compiles the questions on the chat, I would want to kick off with maybe my question. I was very curious about, so that time frame when you were quit the job and you embarked on going to Thailand, I presume, what was your mindset like? Did you just, I mean, you didn't like the job, or like a bad breakup, or like what was the trigger point, earthly, materialistic trigger point, or was it, I know the calling is there, but what happened then?
That's a great question. And often, especially when you become a monk, this question is that, did you have a breakup?
Yeah.
Job. This is very common. You're not the first person who's asked me this.
Yeah.
It sounds like, kya ho gaya, bhaiya? My parents also, what has happened? Why are you taking this drastic decision? However, it was not with some of these things. You might have heard of the Chinese bamboo tree. For the first 3 years, nothing much happens. And suddenly it shoots up to 80 feet in the third or fourth year. And so in my case, it was like that. It was simmering. It was simmering from the age of 17, 18. I'd been meditating. I'd been hanging out with spiritual type of people. I'd been learning many things. And this thought was there. Wouldn't it be nice to do something different? Wouldn't it be nice to be a school teacher? Wouldn't it be nice to be a monk? But I didn't have the courage to really talk about that openly with people. So in my case, there was a friend of ours, Hiro Advani, in Bangalore. He invited me for dinner. And as I was having dinner, usual question, how's it going? I said, it's okay. He said, it's okay. I said, yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm functional, but it's not much fun. He said, okay, what would you rather do? I said, I'd rather be a monk, or I'd rather be a school teacher. Then why aren't you doing it? He said, yeah, but I've just done an MBA. I've just barely begun working. I mean, I should give this a fair shot, I feel. He said, I want to show you something. So after we finished dinner, he played a movie for me. And I don't know if any of you watched this movie, but you should. It's called Dead Poets Society by Robin Williams. It's about a stiff school, boarding school in the UK. And this English teacher, new English teacher comes, Robin Williams, who completely just blows the mind of these students with literature and poetry. And they get so excited that late at night, they smuggle out of school, go into a cave and put blankets over their head, and they read poems to each other. The Dead Poet Society, the reading poems from dead poets, right? And long story short, that movie is about the price we pay when we don't listen to our intuition, don't listen to our dream, when we squash our own inner flame, the big price we pay for that. And when I saw that movie, something deeply shook in me and said, I have to honor this. There's a flame in me. I have to honor this. If I don't honor this, it's going to die. And that very night, those days we didn't have email on our phone. I went to my company. I checked in, went to the computer office, the company laptop. And I wrote down, I don't know how many, 10-page email to my parents. I sat from like 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning, telling them that while I respect all they've done for me, I need to take a different journey, and this is not where my heart is. And that was the trigger. That movie was the trigger. Big Dead Poet Society by Robin Williams.
Wow, that's just, thank you for sharing that. So we have our first question. So I would just request if you could also turn on your video as you ask the Q&A.
Yeah, great.
Just read it out from the chat. So Bharat's question is, how to manage all responsibilities for my relatives along with my happiness, fulfilling all expectations and responsibilities, I forget my happiness.
Yeah, good. So first of all, notice how just generally India, how much extra responsibility we take on. Like nowhere in the West do they pay for their kids' weddings unless they're multimillionaires. Kids figure out their own weddings. Most kids figure out their own university education, right? This is a cultural thing. We have the idea that we will take care of our kids until they go to school, go to college. Okay, school is understandable, but college and university and marriage and also buy a house for them after that. I mean, this is a cultural thing. We have to understand this, right? So first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is your real responsibility? I think my understanding is, if I was a parent, my real responsibility is to be as happy as possible, to be as passionate as possible, to take as big, to live my maximum life, even if it means a little failure here and there. And I think that would set a far better example to my kids. That look, our father
live my maximum life.
Our father decided to be an entrepreneur, even if it meant for a while moving to a smaller house and maybe moving to a simpler school. But he took a risk and he tried different things, right? So to me, the best example you set is not just by paying the bills and sending them to the best school and best college. The best example you set is when you live your best life. That influences, like for example, Sarah Blakely, who's one of the world's youngest billionaires. She said that her father would ask a question every week. I think you should all learn this question if you have kids. And the question is, the father would ask her and her brothers, what have you failed at this week? What have you failed at this week? And if they didn't have any answer, he said, that means you haven't stretched yourself. That means you haven't tried something new. And so every week they had to come up with some answer or something they did that fell flat on its face, something that humiliated them, something that made them basically feel foolish. And that was the father's way of saying, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall flat on your face. So about expectations, I would say, all right, there are expectations from others. There are responsibilities for others. But please, you also have a responsibility to yourself. At the end of your life, you're going to be answerable to yourself more than anybody else. In the Greek tradition, there's a very fascinating concept of hell. What is hell? Hell is on your deathbed, you meet the version of yourself who you could have been. And that's hell. The gap between who you are and who you could have been, that's hell. So how do you reduce the chances of going to hell? You start taking, right now, if you were to meet the version of yourself you could have been in every way, mentally, emotionally, physically, then is there a very big gap? You got a very deep hell. There's a very small gap. If there's no gap, you're in heaven. That's the closer you are to heaven, right? So I would say, don't try to do it overnight, Bharat. It's a process. Today, you're getting some inspiration. Sarah Blakely was very bad in taking exams. She did not go to a good university, did not go to a good college. She was selling fax machines. But she had an idea and she began working on it. It took her over 3 years. She never told anybody about it. And that idea was a different kind of women's underwear. And today she runs Spanx and she's a multi-billionaire. She's been on the cover of Forbes magazine recently. And I think she's a great example of someone who has used what we call law of attraction. She says, I used to visualize all the things I wanted to do. I used to visualize having my own brand. I used to visualize being in, all over the world, my stores being all over the world. And today that's exactly what's happening. So like this, it may not happen overnight, but you got to prioritize it and you got to start chugging away at it, plugging away at it. Can you take out 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week and working on your big dream? And in my case also, I wanted to be a monk when I was 17 years old. It didn't happen until I was 23 years old. It took 7 years, right? So it was a process in which I also got stronger. I also got clearer. I learned more about what's it like to be a monk. And all of those, and today what I'm doing, while I was a monk already, I began visualizing, okay, this monk thing is nice, but this is not fully exactly what I want to do. Because I don't want to be limited by one way of thinking. I want to be more open than that. So I began visualizing my kind of life and how I would travel and how I would teach and how I would learn. And that's kind of what I'm doing today. And again, today, in fact, just before this, I had a 3-hour session with people coming up with a project for the full year ahead. And so it's similar thing. I'm getting them to investigate what are their values, what is their vision, what are the important themes of their life, what do they love doing, and how can they break that down, and how can they brainstorm 108 ways of doing it, and how can they phase that out, and what are the daily habits they have to put in place to achieve that, right? So the process is ongoing. The journey actually is endless, but the destination is now. We've got to start now. We've got to start from where we are. So yes, you have responsibilities, but don't neglect the responsibility towards yourself, and start from where you are, and you will be able to get there.
Awesome. So let's go to the next question. Satish Emmanuel, do we have to believe in destiny? Or as they say, your destiny is in your hands. How can we figure out our own calling?
This is an age-old question around destiny and free will. And I would say that if you have this deep urge in you to want to do something, then yeah, why not? That's destined. It's why do I have this urge to, for example, teach? Not everybody has an urge to teach. Why do I like, one of my hobbies is board games, and I do a lot of playful things as well. I'm not just a spiritual teacher all the time. So why do I have that? Not everybody has that big. I have a big fun quotient. I like to have fun. Fun is an important element for me, right? So in some way, that's also destined, right? Why am I like this and not some other way? Why am I not so super serious all the time? So there's an element of destiny. At the same time, I also can check in the moment. And I would say the free will part comes whether I choose to believe this thought or not. Thoughts are arising by themselves. Thoughts are conditioned. If you go deeper, you'll realize every thought is conditioned. What I'm saying now is based on a language which is conditioned. It's based on previous things I've thought about, and it's reorganizing itself in a kaleidoscopic way. It kind of reorganizes itself. So that's conditioned. But in this moment, I can be aware of myself speaking to you, just like you can be aware of yourself listening to me, and aware of the thoughts and the feeling that's triggering. And for me, that's the free will. And that moment of awareness, that is the unconditioned state. So as far as I'm conditioned, I'm concerned, the way my understanding is, whatever is happening in this world is based on cause and effect, and cause and effect is definitely conditioned. However, who we really are is beyond cause and effect. And so in a way, the true destiny that we have, the higher destiny, the larger destiny, is to wake up from the robotic conditioned state that we're in. And we are conditioned down to our, by the way, our genetics, the shape of my nose, the color of my eyes, the color of my head, it's all conditioned. This is genetic conditioning. But there is something beyond this. And that's why we go and embark on a spiritual journey to touch the unconditioned state. And is there such a state? Can we access such a state? And not just access it, is that our true nature? Is that who we are before birth and after death, and even below, behind our life? Then that's a very deep question to ask. And then that becomes a stability. So the simple way I would answer this is, as long as you assume you have free will, then you should use that free will in the most skillful way possible. You should ask yourself the question, what deserves my attention? What deserves my energy? What deserves my time? And you do your best to follow that. And if you truly realize that, hey, it's just a conditioned process, then you follow what's called surrender. Let thy will be done, not mine. The deep, like a kitten surrender, the mother comes and moves it around. The kitten just surrenders and trusts. The baby monkey has to hold on to the mother, but the baby kitten surrenders. And that's the path of surrender and trusting that the right thing will show up at the right time for you, and the right inspirations will come, the right people will show up. So if you want trust and surrender, you go the path of surrender. If you feel you're the one who's doing stuff, that's the path of wisdom. Then take initiative and do the best thing you can. And eventually you'll come to a place which these seemingly opposite things, you find actually they're not opposite. That the sense of surrender and the sense of free will, destiny and free will, they're both based on an assumption of me being a separate entity that is subject to destiny or that has free will. And at some point that illusion will dissolve. And that's when you transcend this puzzle. It's an age-old puzzle. The only way you transcend it is by asking who is subject to destiny, who has free will? And you find it's a big question mark.
Well, again, I'm actually mesmerized by each answer, and it's kind of becoming hard for me to like listen and do the coordination here. So just in the interest of time, we have time. I don't know about
I can go for another 10 minutes. Then I have another call.
I figured, yeah, 8-10. So there are 3 questions right now, and I don't know if you're looking at the chat. So we have Dave's question. And then we have Shiv Prasad and Savyasachi. So I'll let you pick the ones that you kind of like in the interest of time.
Let's say, so for example, parents, the Buddha does say that it is our responsibility, because, when we were most helpless, when we literally couldn't even, we just pee and poop wherever we were going. And we would definitely have died if it wasn't for our parents. So you cannot deny that there's a very deep responsibility to your parents. The Buddha says, if you spend your whole life feeding your parents, 4 requisites, right? Feeding your parents, clothing your parents, giving them shelter, giving them medicine, your whole life. You take care. In fact, he even says you carry your mother on your right shoulder, father on your left shoulder, your whole life. You will still not repay the debt of gratitude you have to your parents. But there is a way you can repay the debt of gratitude. If your parents are stingy, you help them be more generous. If your parents are not skillful in their words and actions, you help them be more skillful in their words and actions. If your parents have distracted minds, you help them have more centered minds. If your parents don't have wisdom, you support them in having wisdom. If your parents are not yet liberated, you help them be liberated. In other words, you help them in their evolution. Not just in their sustenance. The first 4 things were just sustenance, right? Food and shelter and clothing and medicine. That's that sustenance. At that level, you can never repay your debt to your parents. But if you can enable their progress in any of these ways, then how will you do that unless you do it yourself? So you have to yourself be on a path of upgrading yourself, growing, and then there's the hope that you can also support your parents. And that's the way we repay the debt of gratitude we have to our parents. So satisfy them. I mean, I don't know if you can satisfy all their, they may, like, for example, they may have many expectations from you, but the Buddha doesn't talk about fulfilling expectations. His own parents had expectations from him. They did not want him to become a monk. They wanted him to be a prince, and he let them down. But he still fulfilled his duty to them, because later on they themselves got enlightened. His parents got enlightened. So that would be the way I would look at parents. How can we figure out our calling? So we've given many ideas on this today, but one thing you can do is you can make a list of all the times in your life you felt most alive. What were the activities? What were the places? What are the things you were doing when you felt maximally alive? When this question, what is my calling, disappeared? That's the moment when you're living your calling. Like, suppose all of us are playing football, right? And we're enjoying it. We're playing football and left and right, and the ball is here and there. We're fully enjoying it. And in between, Jay raises his hand. Okay, stop, everyone stop. Yeah, what happened? I have a question. What's the question? What's the purpose of our life? He'll say, Jay, please get off the football field. Please let us enjoy our football right now. Because we're so much in the moment. We are already living our purpose of life. We are energized. We are in the moment. We're doing our best. Meraki, we're pouring ourselves into what we're doing. This is the purpose of our life. Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets, she talks about being perplexed about questions like purpose of life and, why is there birth and death and this and that. And she's walking, she takes these long walks in New England, and she's walking and she sees these wild roses swaying in the breeze, and she's mesmerized. These roses seem so happy. So she talks to the roses. She says, wild roses, do you have an answer? And the roses give a very interesting reply. They say, excuse us, but right now we are entirely busy being roses. So when you're truly living the purpose of your life, this question does not arise, right? So we want you to get to a place where you lose this question and you lose the answer to this question, and you're just alive. There's no sense of purpose of life and this and that, calling and this and that. But until then, you investigate. Look at the point in your life when you've forgotten these kind of questions, when you've been fully alive, fully present, and you could have stayed there in fact, you lose a sense of time. That's another good one. When you forgot, was it 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? Just time was lost. That's a very good indication. When you become timeless, when you lose your limits, when you lose your normalcy. We all have hang-ups. We all have mental hang-ups, emotional hang-ups. We all have funny patterns, right? But there are places where we lose those hang-ups and we access a deeper sanity. Well, that's a good indication that that's your calling. 3-step process an individual should do to figure out purpose of life. We would have come tattooed with the 3-step process if it was meant to be like that. So I would say, why 3-step? I think I would challenge you to come up with 30 different perspectives on purpose of life. 300 different perspectives on purpose of life. Why are you looking for your narrow thing, right? And I've actually, in my book, where's my book? In my book, I have a whole chapter on purpose of life. And I've given you, I think, maybe 25 different ideas on purpose of life. So try this and then find on your own. don't look for these kinds of quick little fixes. Although I did give you some quick fixes today. I said, write down a list, answers to the question, what is the purpose of my life? And the one that sends shivers up and down your spine, that's the purpose of your life. So try that, see if that helps. So I'm lacking this one point in organizing towards my calling. And maybe this is that I've not inculcated from the childhood days, either by parents or by education system. May I know how it can be achieved at this stage in life? I don't really believe it. I don't really believe it, because Shiv, you're probably organized in some ways and disorganized in some ways. And you will find we organize by values. So for example, if knowledge is a high priority for me, you come to my laptop, you'll find clean folders for all my stuff. You come to my bookshelf, the books are organized well, right? If knowledge is high priority, that's organized well. If money is high priority for me, my accounts are in order, my taxes are in order, my investments are, I know exactly where to go to know where my life insurance is, where this investment is, that investment. If it's low in my value, it's totally disorganized. I mean, I don't even know where the papers are, where everything's gone. So the places where you're most organized and you're willing to spend more money are your high value things. Like, for example, I don't mind spending money on retreats and workshops and learning books, courses. I don't mind spending money on that. But if you ask me to spend money on like a fancy jacket, like buy a Gucci jacket, I'm probably not that interested, because that's lower in my value. Not that there's anything wrong in that jacket, but for me, it's lower down in my value chain, right? So wherever you're most organized and you are willing to spend a lot of money and time and energy, that's your high value. And wherever you're less organized, that's your low value. So you have to check, Shiv, where in your life are you higher? Like, for example, attention deficit. Have you heard of ADD? Attention deficit disorder. We can't pay attention for longer. Some people say they're attention deficit. It's not true. Attention deficit children can play video games for 5 hours without stopping. How is that possible? If they had a brain condition, they should not be able to play. They should not be able to focus for more than a few minutes. They play video games for 5 hours without stopping. So every attention deficit comes with attention surplus. It's just that the teachers in school haven't figured out how to teach this to them in a way that made sense to them. So like this, Shiv, you have to check in your life, where are you already organized? Where are you already one-pointed? And maybe what you're doing is you're trying to do something that's against your values. And that's what's creating this kind of a discrepancy within you. When you became a monk, join the army, or go to a place where you have one theme, you keep out distraction, the shiny objects, the envy from successful old colleagues. How do we do that in our own place? It's true, actually. In some ways, it's easier to do it in a monastery, to do it in an army training ground. And in some ways, it's much harder to do it in our day-to-day life. However, every disadvantage comes with an advantage. So what I noticed is, in the monastery, I made a lot of progress, but it was based on perfect conditions. So when I came back outside, I realized that, oh, I thought my progress was this much. Actually, it's only this much. Whereas in normal life, your progress is slower, but it's more robust. So with crying children at home, with landlord asking for the bill, with a noisy neighbor, with a housing society that's full of funny crooks and funny people, with a government that keeps getting in my way, with that, if I develop some patience and a sense of humor, and I have creativity, and I'm work, then that is robust, that is solid, right? So I agree that in ideal conditions, growth is faster, distractions are less, we can move forward, and that is great. However, wherever you are, see, there's no mistake in the universe. If you are in a place where all this is not there, you have to work with what you have. Not all of us are given the best ingredients. We have to work with the ingredients we have and still make a delicious cake. So that is your challenge. How can I take what I have and make a delicious cake out of this? Something that will fulfill me and my community, and the whole world will benefit from my life experience. Is it possible? What is your greatest lesson that you want one and all of us to learn without fail? You know, my greatest lesson is not to learn lessons from other people so much. The greatest lesson is listen to your own life. Don't look at the books and the Facebooks. Look at the book of your own life. You are learning, if you just look at your own life today, what worked and today what didn't work. You will learn some amazing lessons. There are some things you said that led to a conflict. There are some things you said that led to strengthening of faith and connection and trust. You can learn something there. So I have, of course, I still learn from teachers and books and everything. However, ultimately, I like to learn from my own life experience. So for me, I do not have a guru. Life is my guru. And I would like to teach you also, let life be your guru. Don't let the Nithya Shantis and all the other famous gurus be your guru so much. Let life be your guru. That is far more reliable. People like me will say things, it may or may not resonate. They're the difference between a motivational teacher and a spiritual teacher. A motivational speaker is trying to impose his values onto you. Come on, you guys can earn more money. You can do it faster. Come on, you can spend more time. This is a motivational speaker. Come on, you can do it, is a motivational speaker. And a spiritual teacher is saying, listen to what your inner voice is saying. Listen to what it's always said. Why are you not honoring that? And find a way, like I said, I'm challenging you to find a way to solve this puzzle of how can I do something that makes me alive and also pays the bills. You know, I had Mahinda Vijay Singhe was a cricket commentator from Sri Lanka. When I was in Sri Lanka as a monk, he was my, they're called dayakas. We have a lay person who supports us. He was my dayaka. He was my supporter. And he would always tell me, Nithya, I'm so lucky. I love cricket. I'm an international cricket commentator and I get paid crazy amounts for it. He says, I can't believe it. I'm doing what I love. I get to travel around the world. I get to do this cricket commentary and I get paid for it. Wow, it's amazing. So this is Ikigai. This is him figuring out what he loves to do. So you also need to you should also, like, I should be pinching myself and think, wow, I'm just doing this for the fun of it anyway. And I'm getting paid for it as well. Isn't that amazing? That's what we want for you as well. How can you talk about depression and how to overcome it without medications? This is a very powerful topic, and depressed is deeply pressed by your own thinking. Depression is believing all your thoughts. In fact, all mental illness is believing all your thoughts. And again, the word depressed has another meaning, deep rest. You have been pushing too hard in a direction that your inner being doesn't want to go. That's why you're depressed. So you need deep rest, which is why depressed people sleep a lot. But they still don't get rest because the mind is racing all the time. So the answer is complex. It has many parts to it. It has parts like you have to get enough sunlight. You have to have enough movement. You have to get the skill of questioning your own thinking. In the beginning, I'm not one of those people who's completely against medication. When a person is drowning, you don't say, "Acha, learn backstroke. Acha, learn moving." When you're drowning, you need a ring to save you. So when someone is drowning, it is okay for a little while for them to have medication until they can be in a place where they can start questioning their thoughts. They can learn more skillful ways of adapting. We shouldn't just throw away all of modern science, right? So, but of course, you're right. We shouldn't get addicted to it. So it has to not just be medication. It has to be medication supplemented with skillful ways of improving your lifestyle and questioning your thinking. And yeah, a big part of it is usually there is some energy in you that wants to come out that's not getting a chance to come out. In the Eastern tradition, we did not label these things like depression and this and that and all the rest. We allowed people time to go through it. And we were actually far more accepting of these things. And like, for example, the Native American tradition, when someone would start hallucinating and would start seeing visions, they would not be seen as mad. They would be seen as having psychic talents. And they'd be given special training because these people would then become the medicine people and the wise people of the village later on. So what modern science and medicine diagnoses as depression or mental condition, from my perspective, is not always like that. It's a breakthrough that's wanting to happen. And breakthrough is always messy, right? They're the kind of breakthrough. You've been stuck in an old identity for too long. You've been stuck in an old set of ideas for too long. And a part of you says, now enough of this. I want to get out of this. So it's a combination of all of this. I don't think I can give, this is a deep question. But essentially, I would say that please educate yourself by learning about depression from different points of view and bring in elements of the body. Like I said, sunlight, movement, diet has an element. The kind of thinking, the kind of thoughts you believe in has an element. And giving people space and allowing them to ventilate what are they not saying. That's again a very important element because there's a lot of emotional suppression sometimes. And don't try to fix it. Don't try to be in a big hurry to get out of it. It has its own curve. And I believe nothing happens just by itself. It's there for a reason. And it's part of our life's curriculum to go through these things. And it is taking certain very deep qualities in you, which they need to go through that. कहते हैं कि, the purest gold goes through the hottest fire, right? So you have to go through this hot fire, this crucible of depression, for some very pure gold to come out on the other side. And if you can learn to see it like that, then you will have the strength and resilience to get through that experience. All right, Jayant, let's hand it back to you.
Awesome. No, I think we're also done with questions. I think you've definitely stirred a lot of questions, basically thoughts. I've never had such a profound talk. Again and again, I really am grateful that you've come, you've spent time, and actually, very eloquently and asked very profound questions, and extremely in swift ways challenged. I know we've stressed for time as well. Again, I thank you. I know you're doing also big corporate events, etc. That's where you go. But thanks for at least resonating with our message. I loved it when you said that, Jay, I like what you're doing. Again, grateful for your time. We hope you would come back, when we're a little more bigger, I guess, and a little more wiser. And also for people, I did want to share for those of you watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. I do have Nithya's website. So this is his site. In case he has, like we all said, he has courses and he's written a book. Please go there. And also he has a YouTube channel, so I would allow you to do some Googling. And yeah, I think he has I remember you tell Challenge Your Love. That was a course that was coming up. I think you do
Challenge of Love. Yeah.
Challenge of Love. I was very inspired. Maybe I might be one of his students there. So guys, that's it. And if you like this, etc., please do drop your comments below in YouTube with the top 3 things that you've learned from Nithya right now, or these questions. Would love to see your comments. Thank you, Nithya, for your time.
Thank you, everybody. And somebody was asking the name of my book. It's called Unburden. It just came out a couple of months back.
Yeah.
And yeah, so on my website, you'll find the different things I'm offering. We have gatherings every full moon and new moon. And if you're part of my YouTube and other things, you'll see me live there once in a while. And then I have a Being and Blossoming session, which they practice with me almost every day. So you can see to what extent you want to be involved and how you want to take this forward. But already what you've learned today, there's a lot. If you just reflect on today's session and ask yourself, what would it take for me to go from a job to a career to a calling? To me, that would be a very good takeaway from today's session. And that's what set me going. And that's what made me think beyond the career opportunity that I was getting and move closer to a calling.
Awesome. Thank you, Nithya. And I would request you to drop because I want to continue my session with the community.
Yeah, please do. I'll step out now. Awesome. All the best, everybody. Take care.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I think that was okay. Let me spend some time gathering my thoughts.